Okay, so one thing I will say is that in high school, when you're very active and always doing the devil's tango, there's always a chance of you basically having a pregnancy scare. And if you guys don't know what that means, well, let's just say always have plan B available with you. It's just my advice. I always have it at my place and I always have it in my car and even in my wallet. My opinion, always carry plan B with you. It's not a bad idea. But one thing I'm gonna say is that pregnancy scares are normal. And to be honest, this was my biggest pregnancy scare yet. But before I get into the story, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. And on top of that, if you guys want to hear these stories live, make sure you guys go check out my Kick channel, kick.com/Bubba. I go live telling these crazy stories face to face with you guys, and you guys will enjoy it. I promise you. But other than that, leave a like, subscribe, and let's just jump straight into the story because I know you want to hear it. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to an insane story. So yes, the title is what happened. Now, I got to explain because obviously I can't just come on here and say, oh, I got my teacher pregnant without actually giving some context. So let me explain it. I remember back when I was in high school, I was a grade 12 student. And in grade 12 is usually around the time where you're about to graduate, you know, finish up school, and basically get rid of all your crazy child life that you had left. Because once you get out of high school, that's when being an adult happens. Going on though, I remember in my grade 12 year, it was my first semester, and I had a class called Information Technology. Basically, it's IT. If you guys don't know what that is, it's basically a class where a bunch of nerds sit in a computer room and basically learn how to code. Now me, the only reason I took this class was because one of my homies was taking the class with me, and I'm not gonna lie, we just did it for extra credits, and also, how hard could coding actually be? So I remember as me and my friend one time were sitting in class doing some coding, for some reason, there was a student in my class that was totally brain dead. And by brain dead, I mean he had major anger issues, and he was more bronze over brains, if that makes any sense. Meaning that he was really jacked and really big, but in terms of brains, he, well, was slower than the average snail. I don't know, anything slow you can think of. And I remember this guy would always sit next to us or near us so he could copy off our work, and it kind of got annoying to the point where I remember I walked up to the teacher saying, yo, this guy keeps copying off us. Is it cool if like you know, get rid of him or something, or just move him to a different spot? I remember the teacher was a guy at the time, and he said, oh yeah, like, I don't mind, sure, I got you. And he ended up standing up and actually going to the guy and telling him, hey man, you can't copy other people's work. You gotta understand, you gotta do your own thing. What? I wasn't copying, is what the angry kid said. And then one thing led to another. He got really upset and ended up punching my teacher in the nose, but not lightly. It got to the point where he actually ended up breaking his nose somehow, and it was actually really mind-blowing. But he ended up going to the hospital, and we ended up not having a teacher. And then I want to say the next day, well, a new teacher walked in, and this teacher was one of a kind. And by one of a kind, I mean she was no ordinary teacher. Like, I'm sorry, if you're gonna put a 27-year-old baddie as our teacher, it's gonna be pretty obvious that instead of looking at the screen, I'm gonna look at her. But yeah, basically we had a really hot teacher come in, and I was full on attracted to her. I thought she was amazing. She looked amazing. Like, oh my goodness, dude. Think of like the hottest chick walking into your classroom and ending up talking to you because she has to teach you. I will say this much, I was always excited to go to IT class after that. But I remember one day when I entered IT class, I realized that none of the students were there. I didn't know why, and honestly, I did skip a couple days of school, so it kind of makes sense why I would be behind and not knowing things. But I remember when I walked in, I saw this teacher sitting in her desk, the really hot one, and I walked up to her saying, hey, like, am I late for class, or where did everyone go? Oh, they're all in the library across the street so they can learn about coding, since we don't have any coding books here in this library. Oh, okay, that's cool. Do you want me to head over there? Actually, can you sit down for a minute? I need to talk to you. Now, when a teacher says she needs to talk to you, obviously, it's usually something not good. So I remember I sat down across from her and I tried to figure out what was going on. She looked at me and said, oh, like, I want to know why you're missing so much school, because like I miss you in my classroom and I need to know like what's going on. Is there any problems at home or anything? And me, I didn't want to say that I was just straight up skipping, because usually when I skip school, it's usually to meet up with a chick and go do the devil's tango. So I ended up making some sob story up about basically how, like, I don't know, my mom was in the hospital and she wasn't feeling well and stuff. Sorry, mom, I didn't tell you about that, but going on. And she ended up believing it and feeling really bad for me. But instead of feeling bad, like, you know, like being there for me, she really wanted to be there for me. Meaning that I remember this teacher ended up standing up and actually walking around to me, bending over and said, oh, like, if you need anything, please tell me. And she ended up actually wrapping her arms around me with her cherries around my neck. Like, are you trolling? I remember at this moment, I got bricked. I got seriously bricked. And knowing this teacher was literally over my head, she looked down at my pants and she saw that I was bricked. It got super embarrassing. And I remember I ended up basically getting my backpack and putting it on my lap just so I could cover it up. And the teacher looks at me and starts giggling. I ended up saying, why are you laughing? Oh, nothing. Do you need some help with that? What is what I said? I meant like you go into the library. Oh, right. The library. Sorry. I thought you were talking about something else. And then afterwards, I remember she ended up standing up with me and we ended up going to the library. We headed to the library. And as we were walking down the hallway, she ended up telling me, Bubba, can I get your Snapchat? My what? Your Snapchat. Why would you need my Snapchat? Is what I said to her. Oh, because like, you know, there's snap maps on there and I'll know where you are. And if you're skipping school, I could snap you and tell you what you missed. In a way, I found this very odd because obviously no teacher would add me on Snapchat. It doesn't make any sense, but this teacher wanted to. So I ended up adding her and one thing led to another. I ended up going to the library and reading the coding books we were assigned. But as I was reading it, I remember my friend walked up to me saying, yo, bro, like, did you not know we were supposed to go to the library? Dude, I just had the weirdest experience of my life is what I told him back. And that's when I started to tell him what was going on. But before I could tell him exactly, I remember the teacher ended up walking in between our conversation saying, oh, like, Bubba, I need to speak to you real quick. Okay. I remember me and her, we ended up basically going out to the hallway and she ended up telling me, Bubba, you cannot tell anyone about this. What are you doing? Sorry, I didn't know this was like a private thing. Bubba, you gotta understand. And she ended up coming really close to me and it got to the point where she was actually kind of like putting her hands on me. And did I say no? Well, obviously not. She was hot. So I remember me and her, we actually ended up going back to the classroom where the computers were and I ended up basically doing her on her own desk. Yes, me and her basically did the Devil's Tango. And I remember after that moment, I started loving my IT class even more. I know that sounds weird because I just did the Devil's Tango with my teacher, but understand this. At this point in time, it wasn't my first rodeo. I remember the next day, I ended up basically going to school and me and her, we'd always look at each other, we'd be flirtatious, and it gets to points where I'm not gonna lie, it was like having a secret girlfriend that no one knew about. It was really cool because I remember every day after school, me and her would actually end up going back to her place and I get to do my homework and get my teacher to help me all the time and then get an award for doing it, which was the Devil's Tango. Things felt so perfect until I remember 1 week later. 1 week later, I remember I ended up getting a Snapchat late at night when I was laying in bed. I ended up getting a Snapchat from my teacher and when I saw this, I found it weird because she never usually snaps me late at night. I remember I opened it and when I opened it, the photo was of a pregnancy test that was positive. I remember I ended up snapping her back saying, oh, like, what is that, a COVID test? Baba, I think I'm pregnant. What is what I said? And at this moment, I remember my life felt like it was falling apart. I started panicking. I started freaking out. I was thinking, do I tell my parents? But obviously, I did not know what to do. So let's just say what ended up happening next seemed really bad. Okay, I saw the comments and I'm sorry that I made a part 2 for this story. I know you guys didn't want a part 2, but I ended up doing it. And I didn't end up posting about it at all this weekend because I was out camping with the boys. So you already know that I'm back home. I'm ready to do this. But before I get into the story, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And on top of that, not to mention, I am live on Kick right now streaming and telling crazy stories live. So if you want to watch me live telling crazy stories just like this one, well, click the link in the description. Other than that, let's just jump straight into this. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to an insane story. So if you guys didn't see the first part of basically how I got my teacher pregnant, you're missing out. But basically, last where we ended off was basically the teacher that I ended up getting pregnant somehow ended up messaging me late at night on Snapchat telling me that I got her pregnant. Now, I remember when she told me that, I told her there was no way this was real. I messaged her a ton of times saying that maybe it's a false positive because my pullout game was literally 101%. There's no way in the middle of the Devil's Tango I managed to do that. But at the same time, the more I thought about it, the more stressed out I got and I did not know what to do. Getting a teacher pregnant is a really big deal. Or actually getting anyone pregnant at a teen age is a really big deal. Yeah, it was around my last year of high school, but still, it was really concerning. So I remember when the next day of school happened, I basically ended up going to school, and when I walked in there, I tried my best to avoid the teacher that I got pregnant. But the thing is that avoiding a teacher is almost mission impossible. If a teacher wants to hunt you down, they will hunt you down. So me, I remember throughout the school day, as I was going to my classes, I would always check out the door before I ended up leaving to basically kind of make sure that I wouldn't get caught by the teacher that I ended up getting pregnant. I remember I looked around around and I kept, basically jumping around the school, being careful and stuff. But then something insane happened where randomly on the announcements at lunchtime when I was in the cafeteria with the guys, I ended up hearing on the announcement saying, Baba, please come to the office. Thank you. Now, I remember when they said that at lunchtime, I found it really weird because usually the school wouldn't do announcements at lunchtime. They would mostly do it around, times where students are more in focus. But apparently they called me down during lunch and I started stressing out. I'm like, bro, there is no way they just did that. I remember my friend looks at me saying, Baba, what'd you do? Did you do anything? No, I don't know why I'm getting called down. So I remember out of stress and out of mind, I knew that maybe it had to do something with the teacher and getting her pregnant. So what I ended up doing was, well, plan B, which was no, not actually the pill plan B, but plan B for me was to basically ditch school. I ended up leaving school that day early and I ended up just skipping school for the rest of the day. I got in my car, drove straight home, and I just sat down stressing out thinking, what should I do next? To be honest, I was thinking about telling my parents about what happened, but to be honest, I don't think that would be the best idea because what are my parents gonna think? Me getting a teacher pregnant? That's insane. And I remember as I was sitting there contemplating on what to do next, I ended up getting a phone call. I ended up getting a random phone call from a number that I did not recognize, but when I answered it, I remember it was literally the teacher that I got pregnant. She ended up saying, Baba, is this you? Hi, is what I said afterwards. She ended up telling me, Baba, you were in my class today and I checked snap maps and you were at home. Do you want to tell me what's going on? I'm good. I'm just, just doing my thing, I guess. And then she ended up saying, Baba, I know I kind of freaked you out yesterday night, but we really need to talk about this. I mean, do we really have to, is what I ended up saying. But yeah, one thing was for sure, she was not laughing. I remember I started panicking and kind of just started stressing out. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. And then that's when she told me, Baba, is there any way I can see you tonight? Tonight? Like you want to see me out of school? Okay. So I remember me and her, we ended up basically planning to go to our local Starbucks. When I got there, I remember I sat down inside and I just started waiting for her. But as I was waiting for her, I remember I sat there thinking there is no way I got her pregnant. There's got to be an alternative. So then one thing led to another. I remember she ended up showing up and she walked into the Starbucks and she ended up saying to me, Baba, listen, we really need to talk this through. I don't know if you told your parents already. I really hope you didn't because I think I'm going to be getting rid of the kid. What? Is what I said? You're getting rid of it? Now, at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was relieved. But then at the same time, I was kind of just weirded out because, well, I don't know, I never got anyone pregnant before, so I don't know how this whole thing works. So I remember I ended up telling her, okay, so what should I do? Do I just get a coat hanger? Do I push you down the stairs? She ended up looking at me with her eyes wide open saying, oh, but this is not funny. I know that, I just don't know what I'm supposed to do, is what I said afterwards. I'm not gonna lie, it was a really base comment when I said there, but you know what? I don't know, what else would I say? I didn't know what to say. I was stressing out. When I stress out, I say things that are pretty out of pocket or just a lot of nonsense. Anyways, afterwards, I remember when that ended up happening, she ended up telling me, Baba, do you want to maybe come back to my place and we just plan this out together? Why can't we plan it here, is what I said. She ended up saying how she's feeling really hormonal and she wants to be in her own house. That's when I said, okay, let's head over. I remember I ended up going back to her place and basically one thing led to another. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I did mention this in a video before, but if you haven't seen the video where I basically explain why I always do the devil's tango, here's kind of a summary. I'm a hypersexual. So knowing that, and you guys knowing this now, I ended up basically going to her place. We ended up sitting on the couch and we ended up doing the devil's tango. I did the devil's tango with my pregnant teacher. Yeah, things aren't looking so good for me. I'm telling you that right now. But I remember after we finished, I remember she ended up basically sitting beside me and she wasn't wearing anything. I kept staring at her cherries, but then she looked at me saying, Baba, yeah, what's going on? Is what I said afterwards. Would you ever think about keeping the kid? What? Is what I said. I remember I ended up basically standing up saying, okay, listen, you're a teacher, I'm a student. You're gonna lose your job. That kid's not gonna have any income. And to be honest, I'd rather make you a single mother. When I said that, I remember she started crying. And now I know in these moments, you're usually supposed to comfort the woman and, be there for her. But to be honest, she was my teacher. It's not like I wasn't gonna see her the next day at school. So I ended up just leaving. I know it's insane, but I just didn't want to be there anymore. So I ended up just leaving. I ended up getting in my car, driving straight home and just passing out, going to sleep. And when I went to school the next day, I remember I ended up basically going to all my classes and pretend that nothing happened. I thought I should, man up and just pretend nothing happens before, the boys or, my friends or even teachers started figuring out that something was wrong with me. I ended up going to classes, doing everything I was supposed to do. And then this is where the story gets insane because I remember I ended up going to my IT class, the class that the teacher was teaching. And when I went there, I remember I ended up seeing how my teacher wasn't at school. She wasn't there. I don't know why she wasn't there. I was confused because, it's not normal for a teacher just not to be there anymore. But then afterwards, I remember as everyone in the class started sitting down, sitting at their computers, waiting for the teacher to come to teach us our next class, we just sat there, and the whole entire hour of our class, she wasn't there. She never showed up. Now, it's normal for me to ditch school, but a teacher ditching school is crazy. So me kind of stressed out worrying because obviously people are going to ask questions. I ended up basically going on my phone, went on Snapchat, and I messaged the teacher saying, yo, where are you? She ended up sending me a photo of her going to an abortion clinic, and she said that she had more important matters to worry about than teaching me about computers, which, I mean, fair enough. I mean, I'm not going to disagree. But yeah, one thing led to another. The next day, she ended up basically coming to school and the kid was gone. Now, I will say this much. I know abortions are a really strong topic nowadays on the internet, you know, pro-life, pro-choice. But at the end of the day, I mean, I was a teenager in high school. I didn't know any better.
All right, so what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story takes place back when I was in high school. And funny enough, this was back in my high school years of me being a dumb teenager. And if you guys know this channel a lot, you guys know I am pretty much one of the guys in my high school that always did the Devil's Tango. And let's just say today's story does get really insane. But before I fully get into it, I just want to say a special announcement. Since Christmas is coming up, we are doing a Christmas advent calendar on my Discord server, meaning that there are going to be fun challenges, games, streams, and movie nights all throughout this week. And also, not to mention, there are awesome giveaways that you guys can participate in. So if this interests you at all and you guys want to have some fun this holiday season, make sure you guys do click the link down in the description down below and join the Discord server. Anyways, let's get straight into this awesome story. So knowing this, honestly, I think one of the classes I really struggled with back in high school was science class. No, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not bad at science, but at the same time, I'm one of those kids that when I go to school, I only want to learn subjects I actually care about. Like, for example, keyboarding. I love typing on keyboards and also doing computer stuff. So honestly, it was easy. Let's just say all the easy classes I wanted to do and all the classes that really took my mind to really put into work, I did not want to do. And science was one of them. I remember one day though, I was going into my science class, and when I entered in there, I remember my buddy came up to me saying, yo, Bubba, real quick, bro, did you know they changed the science teacher? I remember I was really confused because we had like the same science teacher for like the first 3 months of our science class being a thing for our semester, but then they ended up changing it to some chick that we never even heard of. We're just gonna call her Miss M. Now, Miss M, apparently a lot of people were talking about her throughout the school, saying that she was one of the most attractive teachers they've seen, and on top of that, she was very jitty. If you guys know what jitty means, basically like she's really like upbeat, she's really perky. That's a better word for it. So knowing this, I was like, okay, well, whatever, how bad could it be? So I remember I ended up going into my classroom, and afterwards when I went in there and sat down, I remember I saw this teacher walk up in front of the class, and she was one perky lady. Like, no joke, she literally started the class off with like her hands together saying, all right, class, get ready for an amazing day. And when I looked at her, the more I thought about it, I could not figure out how old she was. Like, no joke, when I say this, I thought she was like either in her 20s or in her 40s. Like, it was that weird of an age gap that I could not tell how old she was. And obviously, don't get me wrong, I could just put my hand up and ask her, how old are you? But at the same time, I feel like that could lead to a lot of bad things. I don't know, my mom always told me never ask a woman how old they are, because, you know, it's not the right thing to do. But at the same time though, you can never tell what's what anymore. Like, seriously, there are 12-year-olds that look like they're 20. Like, this world's really gone downhill at this point. Anyways, going on with the story, I remember when this teacher was teaching the class, one thing I really realized was like she kept staring at me for no reason. And every time like she asked a question, she looked at me first with eye contact and then looked at all the other students right after. It was like she was expecting something from me, and I have no idea what. Obviously, I didn't answer any of the questions that she asked that science class, nor did I even care, to be honest, because like I said earlier in the video, I didn't really pay attention to school, nor did I care enough for it. But then I remember after a while, she asked this one question that was really bizarre. She said, okay, Bubba, so can you tell me, do you have 11 protons? I remember I looked at her and I'm like, what? Protons? What do you mean? And then she said afterwards, really oddly, because you are sodium fine. What is what I said? I remember so confused. And then afterwards, a bunch of students started laughing, especially like the smart kids in the back of the classroom that were sitting there. They all looked at me and said, do you not understand what she just said, loser? And then I remember I looked at her and I'm like, huh? I didn't understand the question, because I thought I got the answer wrong, which I obviously would have if I ended up saying, wait, what? But you guys know what I mean. But then she just ignored the question and then just kept working in the classroom and teaching the class. Now, honestly, I had no idea what happened in that moment. I remember I was really confused, and then afterward, my buddy texted me saying, dude, did you not understand what just happened? And as I quickly glanced at my phone, I texted him back saying, dude, I have no idea what you mean. And then literally, he ended up texting me back saying, the teacher just flirted with you, bro. Like, literally just flirted with you in front of all of us. bus. I remember I looked around and I saw everyone just staring at me still, and I'm like, oh, that's weird, and ignored it and just kept listening to the class. Anyways, after class, I remember everyone got up and the bell rang, and basically I was ready to leave my classroom, but right before I left, I remember the teacher ended up saying, hey Bubba, can you come here real quick? I remember I turn around, I look at her, I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And then afterwards, I ended up walking up to her and she said, yeah, so I was just wondering, do you need like extra help in class? Because like I'm down to help you every day after school for a bit. And I remember I looked at her and I'm like, am I failing my class? Because if I wasn't, then I wasn't gonna stay, obviously. But then afterwards, she ended up going to her computer, looking at me, looking back at her computer, and it says, yeah, you're actually failing. You're at a 42%. I remember I was so confused because the last teacher that before he left, he ended up saying that I was at a 65. So I was passing, but now I'm failing 45%. What? None of it made sense. So I remember I ended up looking at her saying, all right, I guess I'll do some extra courses because, you know, she said she would help me out. So obviously, I remember during that day, I remember going to my other classes and kind of panicking, but at the same time, weirded out how randomly I was failing a class that I thought I was doing good in, or at least passing. I remember I was super confused and I was just doing my own thing, doing my own classes. And afterwards, my buddy walked up to me saying, dude, it's so weird how that teacher flirted with you in science class. And after I looked at him, I'm like, yeah, but dude, I'm failing my class. He ended up looking at me saying, what? We were passing literally not even before she came. And that's when I started to think a bit differently. I thought maybe that she was making me fail just so I would see her. So I was gonna go confront her, but honestly, at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, guys. She wasn't like ugly, you know what I mean? Like she looked young, but at the same time, she looked old. I don't know. It just got to the point where I was questioning in my mind, should I do this or not? Then I remember after school came, and basically I ended up, you know, going towards her classroom when the bell rang, and I ended up going into the classroom, and she looked at me and said, hey Bubba, welcome to class. I remember I looked around and I saw no one was there. It was just me. And you would think for a person that's, you know, trying to help other students to pass their class, there's no way I'm failing science out of the whole school. Like seriously, out of the entire school, I'm the only one failing science class. That made no sense. But anyways, I ended up sitting down and I ended up basically starting to, you know, listen to what she was teaching and stuff. And every time she would teach something, she kept making a pickup line. Like I remember the other one she said, she was literally like, are you made of copper and tellurium? Because you are C-U-T-E, cute. And I remember when she said that, I was just so weirded out. It got to the point where I just didn't want to be there. And I kept, you know, telling her, honestly, like, don't get me wrong, I like the lines and the pickup lines and stuff, but it's not really like my way of learning. Then I remember when I said that, she ended up looking at me and saying, oh, really now? And then she ended up coming really up close to me. And it seemed like that she had the eyes of like the devil's tango. Like she wanted to do it. So I remember as she came up to me and then literally out of nowhere, she ended up kind of like grabbing my like shoulders. And then she ended up coming down towards the side of my face and she ended up giving me a kiss on the cheek saying, you're really cute though. At that point, I knew what was going to go down. And I kind of just didn't think it was the right moment because we were literally in a classroom. And at the time, I'm not going to lie, I didn't know if there was like cameras in the classroom, but at the same time, I didn't really care even though it already kind of just started happening. And let's just say one thing led to another. She ended up getting really close to me and yeah, she ended up sitting on top of me and we ended up, I guess, doing the devil's tango on the literal desk. Yeah, not the teacher's desk, on my student desk. So you got to think a student desk with a teacher on top and me hitting it from behind. You know what? Actually, I don't want to get demonetized, but you guys know what I mean. Anyways, long story short, that ended up happening for like 20 minutes. And I remember out of nowhere, the janitor that was in our school ended up kind of like walking down to each classroom and he ended up knocking on our classroom and looking through the window and seeing what was going on. I remember he ended up entering in and saying, yeah, you two students shouldn't be in here. Come on, get out of here. Get out of the classroom. I got to clean it up. So I remember we both ended up putting our clothes on as fast as we could. And it seemed like the janitor didn't really care, which was a good thing, I guess. And then afterwards, I remember my science teacher ended up just leaving with me and acted like she was a student in the school, even though she was the literal teacher. But I guess the janitor doesn't really know that. So going on from there, I remember me and her, we ended up just going to the parking lot and she ended up just telling me, oh, that was a close one. Hopefully no one finds out. And then she ends up going into her car and driving away. Just like that. She didn't even say bye to me. She just said that she was happy we weren't caught. And honestly, I would say that's the last time I ever talked to her, but let's just say she was my teacher. So obviously it wasn't the last time. But let's just say another time when she went under my desk, well, that's where things got really, really intense. But hey, it is what it is. Anyways, guys, that is basically it for today's story. So like I said earlier, join the Discord server if you guys want to hear more of this awesome event that we're having. And like I always say, follow for more embarrassing stories. Peace out, guys.